This week on African Perspective, women leadership on the continent.
We succeeded to have women's representation in the political sphere, but we did not succeed to make sure that those who are in those positions, they really carry the millions of the women who they are expected to represent.
Join us as we focus on the role of women on the continent.
Well, coming up tonight on African Perspective, in the Kingdom of Lesotho, it's just over 50 years since independence, but women's voices are still subdued. Their representation in key and strategic positions is largely skewed towards the patriarchal system that is mainly in favour of men. Meanwhile, in the east, Rwanda and Ethiopia, they lead the way in women's representation of positions of leadership. Their neighbours have made strides in closing the gender gap, but it is still a man's world. For more on this, we're now joined by Tsepiso Makwetla. She joins us in studio for what we can expect tonight. Coming up, these are very good moves for women going forward.
Absolutely, Shante. So we're going to do case studies. Lesotho, as you've mentioned, there's disquiet about the level of participation of women in politics, and we're also going to look at Kenya, where there was a demonstration last month, women wearing white scarves saying, why are you not doing enough for gender parity? But today is UN Day, as you know, United Nations Day earlier on was talking about how to improve the lot of the continents in poverty. And one of the best ways to do that, it's been found, has been to ensure that there is better equity, representation of leadership. And we'll be looking at what is holding back some countries, where Ethiopia has made this move of 50-50. Rwanda has more than 60% of deputies represented in parliament. You've got a country like Nigeria, for instance, where in the upper chamber of the House, only 7 women are represented out of 109, 39 out of 360. What is causing those countries to lag behind? And policies, are women in those places to be able to be part of law development and implementation? We also asked the questions. We've had our midterm budget policy statement tabled today. Are budgets being put in place to ensure that there's advancement in this? You know that SDG 5 is specifically for gender equity. We'll be looking at data as well. Is there enough data to ensure that the challenges that exist are understood and can be targeted in terms of the approach and ensuring that there is improvement?
Yeah, definitely. And inward looking anywhere towards South Africa?
We definitely are looking at South Africa just in terms of the broader context of the African continent. Of course, our guests will be South African, but who have wide international experience. They've traveled internationally, they've worked internationally in high positions. But the question is, are women in general, when they get appointed to those strategic positions in sectors, for instance, that don't give women a chance, are they ensuring that they bring more women on board? Are they ensuring that there is equal pay amongst men and women? Are the conditions conducive so that we have more women in those spaces? And are there strategic positions as well? We're talking about, is there an executive ceiling where women only get up to a certain point, but when it comes to the very important decision-making platforms, are they shut out? And specifically, can we also just look at the challenges that are facing the change in these policies, across the African continent? Absolutely, Shanta, and that's why we're saying that we'll be looking at data, the availability of data. The UN itself said when they transformed from the MDGs to the SDGs, in general, data, credible data, was a problem, and even now it's been found that there's not enough data to come up with solutions that clearly identify the problems. So we'll be looking at that, but also talking about what some of the barriers are and the lexicons in terms of language. Young people are now at the forefront of some of these struggles, these fights. Are they changing the conversation? Is social media moving moving along with the times, and how is society receiving that? Because it's one thing to have laws in place, but if you can't change the societies within which women live, then we can't talk about gender parity, because the environment then does not exist to push women forward.
Definitely. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Tsepiso, Makwetla, just telling us what we can expect coming up tonight on African Perspective. In some other news, that Nzinga is standing